Step one is to mix your ingredients together. The flour, the sourdough starter, the salt, and warm water. And as you mix, you will see that your dough resembles something like this. And you're going to keep mixing by hand with a wooden spoon, maybe this end of a handle of a wooden spoon, or with this kind of wire whisk that's made for bread dough. And continue mixing until no dry spots remain. So now you can see I have finished mixing my dough, and it looks like this. It's sticky, kind of shaggy, and I'm going to leave it rest for 15 minutes. I'm going to cover it up. I've covered up the bread, and I'm just going to leave it here on the counter at room temperature for about 15 minutes. This is like a shower cap. You could use saran wrap. The reason you want to cover it is so the dough doesn't get dried out. So now you can see my dough has rested. I have a cup of water here, and I'm going to use this water at room temperature just to keep my hands wet. I'm going to be wetting my hands. I'm going to loosen the dough from the edges of the bowl, and I'm going to pull the dough from one end, and I'm going to stretch it up and fold it over itself. And then I'm going to turn the bowl 1/4 turn. I'm going to repeat. I'm going to pull the dough, stretch it over itself, and then turn. I'm going to do that one full time, 4/4 turns with a wet hand so my hands doesn't stick to the dough, and one full set of 4 turns is considered one stretch and fold. So see, I'm getting my hands nice and wet, and I'm going to loosen the dough from the edges of the bowl. This is just getting ready to do my stretch and folds. And then I'm going to gather up the dough with my hands. I'm going to pull and stretch over itself and turn. Keep your hands wet. I'm going to pull and stretch and turn and pull. And see, it starts to stick to itself. I'm activating the gluten in the dough so that my bread holds together when it's being shaped and then baked. See, I'm just pulling, turning, folding it over itself. And I've done that 4 times now, so that's one full stretch and fold. So I'm going to do this about 8 to 10 more times to really activate the gluten and get the dough to stick together. So I'm going to do just one more set of stretch and folds, but you can see that my dough is a nice ball of dough now, smoothing out. So there's 1, 2, 3. You can see the bowl gets kind of messy. And 4. Okay, and I'm going to let that dough rest for another 15 minutes before I do my next set of stretch and folds. All right, I'm ready to do my next set of stretch and folds, and the dough has become a little smooth, and now it's going to be a little easier to do my stretch and folds. It won't be quite as messy and sticky, and so the dough has had time to rest. I'm going to do my stretch and folds. I'm going to work rather quickly instead of as slowly as last time, because now you know what I'm doing. And again, I'm going to do this about 8 to 10, maybe 12 times. You can see how the dough sticks together a little bit better now, and it's much smoother. It doesn't look quite as shaggy. And so I'm going to continue to do this. So I just want to show you that the more I do these, the more active the gluten is going to be, and the dough is going to be sticking together. So it gets a little bit harder to do the stretch and fold. So now the dough just stays in the bowl, and I just grab an end and I stretch and fold it over itself. So I'm almost done here. All right, so I'm ready to do my third set of stretch and folds, and the dough gets a little looser while it's resting for that 15 minutes. Just so if that happens as you are doing yours, don't worry about it. I'm getting my hands wet, I'm loosening the dough, and see how the dough's gotten loose again? That's okay. I'm gonna do my stretch and folds, keeping my hand a little damp, and I'm gonna go through this a little faster than the last time. I'm just gonna stretch, turn, stretch, turn, and as I do this, I continue activating the gluten. You can see that the dough is getting tighter as I do this, and I'm gonna do this about 8 to 12 times. Okay, I've just performed my fourth and last set of stretch and folds, and my dough is nice and tight, not as loose as it used to be. And I'm just going to do this sort of coil and fold a couple of times to create some tension over the surface of the bread dough. And it kind of rounds it into a little ball, a little nicer and cleaner. Then I'm going to leave it like this, and it's going to rest for about 10 hours. So this is my dough. It has doubled in size, maybe even a little more than doubled. What I did, because I'm using a glass bowl, is I drew a line with a dry erase marker. So this is where my dough started when I put it away. It's been about 10 hours. Yeah, no, actually about 7 hours. So I don't need to wait any longer. I can do the next step, which is to pre-shape my dough. So I set up a little workstation here. This is just a silicone mat. You could do it on your counter. It just gets a little messy. I'm going to spread a little bit of flour down here because this is where I'm going to pre-shape my dough. I'm going to be setting it out here, and I don't want it to stick. Okay, so just sprinkling, spreading a little flour. So my dough has kind of tripled, I would say, in volume, which is great. It means there's lots of nice air in there. And so if it's a cold day, it's going to take longer. This only took about 6 hours. I kept it in my oven so that it was a little bit a warmer environment. About 80 degrees is good, and it's not 80 degrees in my house. So to make my oven warm without turning it on, I just turn on the oven light, and I leave the oven light on the entire time. So that light bulb kind of heats up the inside of the oven. So you probably have something similar that you can do, but it just helps speed up the time a little bit because it could be anywhere from 7 to 11 hours. And so if it's cooler in your home or you leave it out on the counter, it might not be warm enough, and so it will just take longer is all. Okay, so I'm going to get a little bit more flour because I'm going to want some on my hands. I'm just going to put a little pile there. And so I'm going to pour my flour out, pour my dough out here, and then I'm going to divide it into 2 pieces because I'm going to make 2 loaves out of this. And I'm going to use this kind of plastic scraper to scrape the dough out of the bowl gently, trying not to pop too many of the bubbles. And then I'm going to use this other tool to cut it in half. All right. So I probably should have left the video on so you can see, because this part is difficult to imagine if I just wanted to tell you. So I took the dough out, kind of poured it out, and then I used the metal tool to divide it in half. And now I'm shaping the dough and just kind of wrapping it all over itself, pulling a little bit, and trapping some of that air inside. Again, I don't want it to stick to my fingers. So I'm going to do this, and I don't even know if you can see what I'm doing. You can see it on my second part of the dough that's right closer to me in a minute. have too much sticky dough on my fingers. And then I'm just going to leave it here to rest. So as I'm pre-shaping the dough, notice what I'm doing. I'm picking it up and I'm kind of letting the ends of it come together to trap a little bit of air in there and help it stay in a nice tight ball. And I'm not going to try not to play around with it too much, but it creates tension over the surface of the dough. And then I'm going to leave it sit for about 15 minutes while I shape the other. So I'm going to now start shaping this one. Just creating some tension over the surface and kind of shaping it into that round shape that's going to go into. And there you go. So I forgot to video the previous step. Sorry, so I'm just gonna have to tell you what I did. So my dough was here, if you recall, and I was shaping it with my hands. So what I did at the end of that time is I did that again. I shaped it again, but only from the bottom, and then I flipped it over so that the, we'll call it the seam side, the rough side, is face up in this batard, I think it's called, the bread basket. And before putting in the bread basket, what I did was I sprayed a little bit of water and then floured this with some rice flour, because then it will have like this nice white covering in a pattern on top of the bread when I bake it, and it won't stick. Okay, flouring it is important. And now this, you can see, there's some air bubbles. That's perfect. This is now going to go in the refrigerator to rest and rise again overnight. Okay, this is the next morning, and my dough has been in the bread basket covered for about 12 hours now. So I'm going to uncover it, and this is another tricky part. I'm using one of these silicone mats that I will put inside my Dutch oven. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the mat, I'm going to put it right over the top of the bread, and then I'm going to flip this over, and voila! Okay, then the next step is to score my bread. Now, this isn't completely necessary, it just adds kind of a nice little design on top. So I'm going to take this little scorer, it's just a razor blade, and I'm going to cut about ½ inch into the bread. This helps give it a nice design as it's baking. Okay, and then I'm going to do this other bread the same way. I'll pause for a moment. Now the next step is take these handles and gently pick up my bread and place it in the covered baker. So you didn't get to see the part where I place it in the Dutch oven, but hopefully you can imagine that. So just be gentle. You try not to let the dough touch the sides of the pan, because as soon as it does, it'll stick. And then now I'm going to bake it for 25 minutes at 475 degrees. And then I will take the lid off and bake it for another 20 minutes at 450 degrees, 470 degrees, depends on your oven, until it's got a nice golden brown on top. You can test the temperature of the inside of the bread before you take it out of the oven. If you're unsure if it's finished, it should be 200 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, you can see I'm ready to take my bread out of the oven. Nice golden brown.